All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jean Marie Brown, and I'm a professor of professional practice at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. Before I joined the academy, I actually worked in newsrooms for more than 20 years. So I take a very kind of professional approach with students. I also take an experimental approach, and so what I would encourage you is to, if you're in a community that has a university, particularly if it's a private university and they have a J school program, is to get to know them and see what they have. Because I think there are a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of resources. We did a Google News Lab last month, or earlier this month, which the Star Telegram, where I used to work, really couldn't do it, even though it's free. It wasn't in their budget because you'd have to have lunch. But I could do it, and I had lunch. I mean, I had food coming in all day. So I invited them to come in. So you might want to try and make friends with your department, with your journalism. One of the things I will tell you is that students, then they don't always do it, as quickly as we want them, as a professional might. But they have the tools. So we have a newsroom that's filled with Macs. And on these Macs, there's every software that you could imagine, and it's updated annually. So they're learning, they're editing their own video in Final Cut Pro. They can build maps in Tableau. They can do a lot, and a lot of times it's not that they can't do it; they can't see what can be done. So we have 3 websites. One of them is our hyperlocal site, and it's called the 109. It covers the zip code 76109 around TCU. This is the Star Telegram's coverage about an upcoming school bond. It's a $750 million school bond. Basically, they put the words, they took them off the paper and they put them online, right? So they did that, and then they did another one on the bond, and here's where the answers are. The last time I looked in this, it had a video, but it was actually the school district's video. This is a school district video. This is not theirs. We took the same approach. So one of the things in this school bond is a penny swap. That means that they're moving money around so they don't have to pay, so voters won't have to really pay a lot more for the bond. This is a reporting student. This is one of my students. Reporting is like you finished all of your intro classes and now you're thrown out to the wolves. So she did video. She did a video explainer. It pops up. There's a graphic. She did a graphic. She did a full story. There's a school. So the ritziest elementary school has been around since 1950, and all of the people in the ritzy boundaries don't want a new school because then they'd have to share their ritziness. Except the school is way overcrowded. So this bond is going to have money in it for a new elementary school. So we had a student go out and do that story. And she found a family. She did a map of the boundaries. She did photos with it. She did the whole thing. So a lot of times I talk to people about what I do and they laugh, oh, student journalists. They really are pretty good. I like to say they're as good as the journalists who are working with them. So if you have an opportunity, and again, some of them will work for free. I always encourage them not to, but some of them will work for free. If they're working for free, then you have to understand that if you get one story a week, that it's free. If you're paying them, then you can go a whole different route with them. But there are a lot of things that students can do that I think you might want to tap into. We also have a political site, and they covered politics from a millennial point of view. They covered the presidential election. So This map, let's read it, was done in Tableau, and they kept up with the voter, with the vote totals for the Democrats, and they did one for the Republicans. They covered the primary elections. They covered candidates who came to Dallas-Fort Worth. They went out and if Sanders was in town, Marco Rubio, I have one student who talks about she didn't sleep the night before Trump came because she was not officially credentialed. And she kept waking up every 30 minutes to check and see if she'd gotten the email with her credential. She got it at about 5:30. But she was there, she covered it. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, that you can get with students if you can treat them like young adults. I talk to a lot of adults and journalists who want to be condescending to them. They might be 18, 19 years old, but they're not stupid, and they know when people are talking to them like they're idiots. So you have to talk to them like they're young adults. And you have to invest the time. I have students contacting me at all times a day, especially if they're doing something big. And you have to know how to invest the time and work with them. But a lot of times they can do a lot. Yes?
That's some very sophisticated work they're doing. Tell me what age groups you're working with. And the thing that we're about to jump into this, a very small nonprofit platform in a very small county in California. And one of the things we think about is discernment at these age levels. What is their ability to discern? School bond issues is a great topic, for example, very controversial. The schools hire all kinds of consultants and experts to pitch it, make it seem like the best thing in the world. What's the ability of the youth who are getting into this to discern what's going on with the nuances of what's being said?
They will go out, they come back and they talk to me, or they talk to another older adult. Sometimes I'm the one who has to talk to them about the nuance before they go out. We haven't been able to get the story because the realtors don't want to talk, but the real issue for this neighborhood is that they all have great property values. And it's the question that, it's not like anybody's property values are going to plunge, but could the half of this boundary that gets the new school get a bump versus the half that has the old school? So there's those kind of, that nuance.
The guidance that you have to give some guidance.
So that you have to give them guidance, you have to talk to them, but you know what? When I was running newsrooms with professionals in them, I had to talk and give them guidance and talk to them about nuance. None of that has really changed. Like I said, it's a matter of, you have to, so when you're working with young people, you have to get their trust. They have very good bullshit detectors. And like I said, they know if you're condescending, they know if you're pushing them to do things except you're not going to be there when they're out on that limb. So they know all of those things, and if you can earn their trust, you can get them to do sophisticated things. And I'm working with everyone from first year to seniors.
First year high school?
First year college. First year college through seniors in college.
Right.
This is all college. This is all college work. It's student media. And that's the umbrella we fall under. The university is very generous, and they underwrite us.
Oh, I thought you were going also out into the community.
Well, they do. I mean,
With kids, I mean.
No. Our students go out into the community. So this one, the penny swap was done by a sophomore. The Tanglewood Families was done by a senior. But the senior actually started covering this story in Tanglewood in the spring when she, as a junior in reporting class.
Thank you.
We have high school kids, so I can maybe talk to them more. I'm Rob Chappell, I'm with Madison 365. Madison, Wisconsin. We primarily cover and focus on communities of color. And one of our overarching long-term missions is to create a pipeline of talent of young people of color who can move into journalism as a career. One of the things we found very early, I did a story in our second month of existence about the fact that the media in Madison is entirely white. And they just kept saying, we don't know where to find these people. We don't know where to find reporters of color. And I said, okay, we'll make some for you then. So what we've done is we developed the Madison 365 Academy. It's funded by Madison Community Foundation and a couple of corporate sponsors. We're a nonprofit. Funders love when you say the word education. They'll start writing checks faster. So the way our program is designed is that we went to the Boys and Girls Club. They have an internship program. So it's Boys and Girls Club members, high school kids, who have already gone through the Boys and Girls Club career readiness program, so they know how to show up on time and how to dress and everything. They're almost entirely youth of color, so that it hits where we need. But it's basically that they apply to the Boys and Girls Club, and the Boys and Girls Club then places them with 40 different companies around town, one of which is us. So it's an already ready group of kids. Like, we didn't have to recruit them. We get a list of names one day. And a lot of them would never have thought of going into journalism before they come to us. And we give them the bug. We get them hooked. The way we do that is the first thing they do for us, and it was a 6-week program. It was a 3-week program the first summer, 6-week program the second summer. And they produced 4 pieces that were publishable in those 6 weeks. The first one they did, they all got something to say, man. I'm going to write my manifesto. So first thing we did with them was an opinion piece. Taught them how to do an opinion piece, how to structure an argument properly, get that out of the system. And then tell them, and the second Monday, I tell them, I don't want your opinion anymore. I don't care about your opinion. Get somebody to say your opinion, then you can put it in the quote. So then the second week, we teach them how to interview. We do the basic structure of an interview, a couple of tricks about how to get people to talk about stuff. And then on the second Wednesday, we actually scheduled 10 community leaders who they love coming down. They love doing this. Scheduled 10 community leaders, older people, business people, whatever, to come, and we just do one-on-one interviews for about a half an hour, where we're all kind of in the same location, in different rooms in the same location. So we got the grown-ups kind of supervising. We're not going to send the high school kids out to the wolves, as you say. And then we go through their interviews. We help them transcribe, and then they write a profile, about a 700-word profile of that person. And the people that get profiled just love it. They just love the profile. They share them on social media, and I was so professional, and the feature's in good hands. And then the third week, they write a news feature where it's a multiple source story. Those we kind of do send them out a little more into the community. We get them on the phone. Like, a lot of times we'll do phone interviews during our time with them. We have them half days for 6 weeks. So they can do a phone interview during their time with us. Some of them interviewed family members about stuff. And some of them took on difficult topics. We had one reporter who, first of all, interviewed the county executive during an interview period, and I had to talk her out of a panic attack. She was so nervous.
Which one, the county executive?
The reporter. The county executive was the only, I said, I know the county executive well. I said, he's going to bring a PR guy. Like, he's the only one of these 10 who's going to bring his PR guy with him for this. And he did, of course. But she was just, I said, you're going to do fine. Just talk to It's just, the whole point of this, I taught them that an interview is a conversation. It's just a chat between you and that person. He's just a person. You got to talk to him. And as soon as she got going, she was perfect, and it was brilliant, and he loved it, and everything was great. So then she takes on the story of, she was Hmong, and she took on the story of the Hmong people leaving Wisconsin to go to California to farm marijuana because it's legal out there. And that's a big secret in the Hmong community in Wisconsin. And she got significant pushback, actually, from the story after we posted it. And I was like, this is the business, kid. And she was, I was very proud of her because she was like, kind of loved it. Like, I made controversy, and it was great. And then the second 3 weeks, we have a whole separate grant program, which is the I Am Madison program, which is the Madison Project, which is history stories from Madison. And we basically had them interview like grandparents and great aunts and uncles and older people and stuff. And we were just brainstorming topics and trying to figure out what to do. And an hour into it, this one kid just kind of drops and said that her grandmother was the first black female firefighter in Madison. And I went, how is that not the first thing you think of? So the whole story is we're teaching them what journalism is, what it isn't. We're teaching them how to narrow their ideas down. I mean, somebody wanted to do a 700-word story on human trafficking. Okay, we got to focus that a little bit. So we figured that out. There were a lot of conversations about nuance and about what are the trying to get at the so what, and also then newsworthiness. You know, news for news, and what it is that constitutes a news story. This first year we had 8 of the 10 completed the 3 weeks. The second year we had 10 out of 10 complete the 6 weeks. About, if I remember correctly, about 60% of them so far have said that they're more likely to become journalists, and 100% of them have said that they will use the skills they learned in whatever job they have. Then the college program, I'll just really briefly touch on the college program because it's basically a college internship. We don't have a formal relationship with the university. We're friends with the university likes us, but we basically call up the university, we call up our, we take some of our interns, say, do you know anybody who wants to do this? We work with the Madison College, which is the local community college, that actually has a journalism certificate. They send us interns, and it's a similar structure. The hardest part about working with college kids is they are flakes. It is hard to get them all in the same room together. We're trying to do like a weekly editorial meeting with interns, and it's damn near impossible. And I mean, I carve out an hour every morning just to text all of them and say, how are you doing on your story? You okay? Who do you need to talk to? So it does suck up a little bit of time, but it's worth it. One of my interns from last spring is now a full-time writer for us. We're applying to the ProPublica local news reporting thing with him as a former intern. And we have our very, very first intern is now a full-time. He's the only black reporter in the Madison print media. So it's only been 2 years, but it's been successful. And the biggest things are, well, the other thing we do in the summertime is we have good relationships with the local news outlets. So we take them on tours of newsrooms. We take them to the daily newspaper. We take them to the TV station and get to sit in and watch the noon live broadcast, which is really fun. But the biggest takeaways I think is if you can find a group of kids that's already a group of kids, they're ready to be interns. If you have anything like that in your community, do that, and then get the opinion out of the way first. That was like the biggest revelation to me when I started this: is just get the creative juice flowing by let them rant about whatever, and then hone that energy down into news.
So I'm kind of a combination of both. Jean Marie and Rob. 7 years ago, spring 2010, launched a site on the west side of Chicago called Austin Talk, sometimes confused with Austin, Texas. We get a lot of advertising requests and inquiries. I'm like, I'm not sure if you want to advertise in the west side of Chicago, but okay. And it came from an idea that I know a student of ours at Columbia College. I never actually had him. He was from Austin, an older student. He was in his 30s and was working on his journalism degree. And very sophisticated guy, and was for a long time very concerned about not that there was a news desert on the west side of Chicago or also on the south side of Chicago, but just the type of coverage that was happening, very one-dimensional coverage. A lot of cops and robbers and very severe crimes. The neighborhood we cover, where we've been for 7 years, this year has already had more than 70 homicides in this one neighborhood. That's the most populated neighborhood of Chicago, has about 100,000 people. But there's so much more to this to this neighborhood than that. And so he and I said, wouldn't that be kind of fun to start something on the web? And right about that time, the Chicago Community Trust, one of the foundations here, one of our major foundations, was being encouraged by Knight, as were many other foundations, folks have alluded to that earlier in the conference, to start to fund local news and to really look at this sector. And so we were fortunate enough to receive actually 3 rounds of funding for a total of about $60-some thousand. So it wasn't a tremendous amount of money to launch the website. And our goal in the beginning was a couple things. One, it was supposed to be a website of and for the community. Well, this is a 90% African-American community. If you look at me, I am not African-American. Now, I live in a neighborhood right next to it, but it's a very different neighborhood, and I would never, ever pretend to say I am of this community. I do feel a special part of the community, and I've been welcomed by the community, but I am not of the community. So it was super important from the beginning for me to be really upfront about that with people. And to own, what my background is and what it's not. And I reached out early on to the main community newspaper, which was delighted, didn't think we were going to be competition at all. What they thought right away were, oh, you'll probably have a bunch of students. Could we possibly share content? We'll even pay you for your content, which they do to this day. And can we share some tips with you for those tips that we don't get to do ourselves? I said, absolutely. So that was a really fruitful relationship that honestly I never would have in my old days working as an editor at the Indianapolis Star and for some other news publications ever thought to go to the competition. So early on, almost accidentally, we realized how important collaboration was, and even is to this day. The other thing I realized right off the bat is students are actually pretty sophisticated news consumers, and they know, especially if we're thinking about anyone under 30 and the future of news, and my mom at some point is not going to be with us anymore. My mom would probably reads all your sites. I mean, the one reads everything, but we need to build our readership, and so I've really been tried really hard over the years to listen to the students, like what they think we should be doing and not doing. And inevitably, the times I didn't listen to them, it was a mistake. We do publish 52 weeks out of the year. I'm very fortunate in that I have at least one graduate student at all times throughout the year, even during the summer, working at least 20 hours a week, sometimes more, depending on if I can get some more individual donations coming in to go out and cover content. We are very interested in civic engagement and civic issues. So primarily, we try as much as we can to write about what the local alderman is doing, local issues that the community cares about. We also are very interested in doing profiles and writing about just interesting people in the community that you might not otherwise know about. We do have fairly good support indirect from the college. I obviously spend time, because I have my salary here, and we're kind of at that point we have been for a few years where do we go to that next level? There's been a lot of interest in the community. I've even begun to explore the idea of a co-op, actually developing some type of co-op where people in the community would actually take over the site, but the college would continue to help fund reporting and that kind of thing. A couple of quick things I wanted to say in terms of colleges and universities. If any of you are interested in, you made a really good point about you have a college or university where you are, you may have many in the nearby area. I am happy to act as a conduit, not that I know everyone everywhere, but I'm really a big believer in students have to get out into communities and cover local news. Those who haven't even thought about this occur, they just want to stand on the carpet and interview Hollywood stars or maybe be on air on TV. Once you put them into a community, I don't care what the community is, and they have that first experience of covering a bond issue, well, it does sound a little dry. Once they get in there and they realize people are really upset and the realtors don't even want to talk to you, they totally get lit on fire. So I'm happy at any point to brainstorm with you after the session or even after you get home from the conference if there's something I can do to connect you, because you only need to connect with one faculty member. Even if there isn't a journalism program, they may actually have a student newspaper, and those students may be super interested in having the experience, and they may actually have more experience than other students would. So anything we can do. And with that, we should open up for questions.
Is your collaboration with the newspaper very two-way, or are you a resource for them?
It actually is. It is fairly two-way. We have tried every year to do town halls to actually have the aldermanic candidates, and we were actually the only people doing this in town. No one had ever actually done this because there are 50 aldermen in the city of Chicago, so the Sun-Times and the Tribune are never going to do something. Even back in the day when they almost had enough people to do that, they were never going to do that kind of, I think, important community work. And so that they really do a lot of the heavy lifting for that in terms of helping organize that. Like I'll bring like the PA system, and then we'll figure out a location. We try to vary the location in the neighborhood. We had like 300 or 400 people show up to because we had a runoff. Back in 2015, they served for 4 years. And it was really interesting, and actually the guy who won credited a couple of these town halls we had with him, especially the first one out, being able to get enough people interested in him. Now he's kind of become kind of like the last person who doesn't always return our phone calls and that kind of thing. That's okay. So that's been an education for the students as well, because they're like, oh yeah, like this guy's like the, he may not win, and he's always going to be returning our calls. I'm like, we'll see about that. But in terms of content, we social media a lot of their content. In fact, I have a social media manager, an alum who actually doesn't even live in the area anymore, who works very closely with the Austin Weekly News. That's the newspaper. And so I feel like we've kind of helped them more with their social media, although I think they help us more with distribution of content. We had started email newsletter, then they started email newsletter. We share the list. Not everyone, we don't have the same exact list, same exact readers, but it's a very nice collaboration. I have to say Dan Haley, I have to do a shout out for him, the publisher. He is a truly innovative thinker well before his time, because I think most people in that instance would be like, I'm not working with you, you're competition. I think he really saw that it makes us stronger.
Do they give you any financial support?
Oh yeah, I get a few $300 a month, in content, yeah, and that pays for my person in the summer, and then I usually go out every year and do a fundraising plea to my network of folks, and honestly, I know I could do more, like listening to our conversation earlier. Like, I don't know if I can get $88,000, but I think if I did a little bit more on that, or brought in someone who's better at that than I am, we could get a lot more money.
It also depends on how you define collaboration and exchanges. So, yes, I had the Star Telegram in for the Google workshop. They also have 2 paid interns that are TCU students in their newsroom. So them opening up internships is a good thing. We are talking about collaborating probably starting in the spring, but definitely next fall, covering the midterm elections. I have resources that they don't have. But you know what? I've got a new student who's going to shoot the Texas game next Saturday, and I've sent an email to a photographer at the Star Telegram to say, hey, can you come by here and work with him one day next week so he knows what he's doing? And talk to him about the equipment, and he can even shadow you during the game. So there's a lot of give and take, and sometimes what I need is inconsequential to them, so they're like willing to give it, but what they need seems inconsequential to me, so I can give it. So it really has to be, you really have to be creative about it.
So I teach journalism at a local community college, and my students are out doing their first real-world news stories right now, and they really like the site that I publish, and they're pushing me to, if their stories are good enough, will I publish them for them? I want to know if there are any sort of issues to keep in mind with something like that. Ethical, do you pay them? It's like sort of an assignment, but it's also like, their first news story.
I think we may disagree. I pay everyone for my content. I don't think anyone should work for free, and the students are, now I don't have beginning freshmen working with me. It's primarily graduate students and then some upper level undergraduate students, so they have a little bit of experience and they've taken some reporting classes, but I think they should get paid. Now, if they did a story for a class and they were going to do it anyway, and then it's kind of like an added bonus to get published elsewhere, I kind of see that as a little bit different. But the work that my students are doing is not embedded at the moment in a class. So I think they should be paid. And I just feel like I need to be setting an example. And the other issue is, if I don't pay them in that community, am I somehow marginalizing that coverage and saying that's not as worthy? And I know people do free things for lots of neighborhoods, but I feel like I need to take that stance, so I pay them.
So if it's work for a class, ethically they cannot be paid.
Okay.
If they're in reporting, so the penny swap, actually all of those stories were done for a grade. You can, the university, because it's the university that's actually paying, cannot then turn around and pay you for the work that you submitted for a grade. that said, I do have students who will go out and cover sports, and do some sports stuff, and do some this, and do some that. Those students can actually get a stipend for that work. I have students in the summer when they keep going to the baseball World Series. School's out, but they're like, can we cover it? We pay their travel, we pay them for covering it. And the other thing with students is these people are not necessarily expecting to be paid $100, $200 for a story. You could give a student $20, and that's a lot of money. It's important, I think, for them to be paid because it makes them value their work.
You should know what the law though is in your area, because City of Chicago requires hourly workers to be paid $11 an hour, and that includes all of our student workers here at the college, and it's true of any other colleges and universities in the Chicago proper. So I pay them at least $11 an hour.
I've been in a similar situation, and there's an ethical issue that always confronts me, and that is if I'm teaching this student and I'm giving this student a grade, and I'm employing that student also, there are ethical issues you have to talk about.
Right. And when they're currently in my class, I usually don't set them on an assignment outside of class, like a news assignment.
Yeah.
But yeah, just wondering about sort of like what's the ethical sort of where the landlines there. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Mine is sort of related to that, because in some communities now, the daily newspaper is like skeleton. I mean,
Yeah.
you have 4 reporters in Gainesville, Florida, and the student-run hyperlocal is supplementing their coverage of that community. And so the students should be getting paid because they're actually providing content to residents in that community. And so I wonder if you're facing any kind of similar pressures.
I'm not currently facing any similar pressure because I pay my kids.
But I'm just saying,
With coverage?
supplementing the daily newspaper's coverage of the community.
See, in our case, we're doing coverage that no one ever is doing. So we're not really supplementing, although a little bit ago, the Chicago Sun-Times approached us and said, hey, we are interested in, because at that point they were looking at wanting to go deep into a lot of neighborhoods. Well, I think you've been reading about the Chicago Sun-Times lately. They have a new owner and they're trying to do some new things. And so we haven't had any more discussions about that. I think in that case, yeah, they absolutely should be paid. I mean, yeah.
Similarly, we're doing coverage that nobody else was ever going to do anyway, and we have a content arrangement with our local CBS affiliate that they can basically pick up anything they want from our site, and sometimes our interns material gets picked up and posted on, and that mainstream is like the highest traffic news site in town. So that's
You pay for that?
no, they don't pay extra. But we pay them a stipend. We don't pay them per story. We pay them a stipend. So it's. But they don't get extra for the extra.
You do get picked up.
But they get picked up and they get,
We cover, like I said, we cover parts of Fort Worth, and we'll cover school board, we'll cover city council. Again, much of that coverage is being written for class, so they're not going to be paid for it. The editors who work with them are all paid, because their student editor, it runs on 2 tracks. So you turn your story into TCU 360 or the 109, you turn your story into me. I grade it, they edit it, they go through it. Sometimes I come out and work with them, with the student editors, and I do, send them emails like, can you spell? There was a lead last week, and I went out to the editor and I said, what's missing from the lead? Didn't have a noun. So these guys are paid though, so I go out there and I can work them over because they are paid. But by the same token, what I'm trying to teach them is to be relevant. And so there's a school bond election. When I get back on Monday, I'm sitting down with the editor of that site, and we're going to plan the coverage. We're going to work that night. We have a studio where they can go live on election night. So, we get all of these tools, and now we need to use them. So I do feel pressure. I think it's our responsibility to cover the bond election, even if it's just for this small area, even if we're just covering Tanglewood, but Tanglewood is like next door. so we need to cover it. So I feel kind of a responsibility, and I think it's the responsibility more so than the supplemental coverage that I'm trying to teach students about your responsibility to your community and the responsibility to the people around you, and that there is a lot of important news that should be covered.
I have one more question.
We had a couple questions.
Kirk, before-
Which, well, actually, I've actually have used entrance once before from my local site, actually from Columbia College.
Yay! I hope they were good.
I couldn't actually,
Netflix.
I actually couldn't afford to pay them, but I'm not getting paid either.
Yeah.
I have wondered, are there any things for an outside site or organizations that's trying to do? Is there anything we should be careful of? I mean, even if I can't pay them, I do say I will be a reference. I will be giving you a global.
Well, we do, yeah, and we have a wonderful person, and this is not true of all college universities, but we have a full-time internship coordinator who actually works as a part-time journalist and also works for the college.
Okay.
And so she places interns throughout my department, so in public relations, advertising, because those interns are also super helpful depending on what your needs are, right? Not just the journalism interns. And we do absolutely do internships for no pay. Now, of course, the higher ed sector is really trying hard to make sure there's payment, but then we also have programs, and most college universities do, where they can apply for internal money, to get subsidized here, and that's a super important issue for us here at Columbia, because we have a lot of first generation students. We have a lot of students of color. We have a lot of students who, don't have the typical, background where, mom and dad are going to subsidize me so I can afford to do a free internship, because the internship actually is like the gateway to a job, no matter what your industry. I mean, that's still very much true in higher ed. So I would still encourage you there may be other ways for the student to be paid. And even if they aren't, there is still some tangible benefit. And sometimes, depending on their major and what their interest is, they actually want the internship to be on their transcript.
Yeah, and actually, one of the interns actually did one getting a job at a newspaper in South Dakota. So I was like,
Yeah, no, I'm sure that had, yeah, so thank you.
We just got the wrap-up time, so one more question, quick.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about students getting involved in community engagement and town hall events. Have you used students in other capacities beyond just kind of original content creation or reporting, helping with finding data or data on databases or building stuff for the web or anything like that?
Yeah.
For any of you?
I mean, those websites, we do have a director of digital, and she works with them, but the students are the ones posting the stories. They were the ones building the graphics in Tableau. They were the ones pulling the data to build the graphics. We expect them to do the work. It's not about us coming out. So they go out and they film their own stuff, and then they have to do the editing. A lot of it is introducing new tools to them. My goal is, and I tell them, I was in newsrooms when it was all going to hell. But because we just kind of stood there and said, there's that internet thing. And so what I tell them is, you have
will go away. We don't need to worry about that.
It's okay. But you have to teach them to think critically. And so you throw something out to them and say, how can we use this as a journalist? And, you look for ways to teach them to do that. And so there are digital opportunities. I have a student that we pay to just run analytics for us. He's not a journalism major, he's in computer science, but he wanted to come run analytics. I have a student who builds graphics, who does all of our t-shirts and all of that. She's a mechanical engineering major who likes to play in InDesign. We have copy editors. So we try, because we do have paid positions, thanks to the university, we try to be kind of a conduit. We're going to make a fashion magazine in the spring, because I have fashion merchandising majors who are journalism minors, and it just feels wrong to keep making them write these stories that are not going to help them get a job. So there's lots of opportunities for students.
And one last thing I'll say on community engagement, we are a media partner, a media sponsor on a bunch of community events, like fundraisers for organizations and stuff, where we get to register about them, they slap our logo on, whatever. But we just make sure that we have a good presence of our students at those events. So when we're sitting at the table at the big gala fundraiser, we've got all these kids, the reporters, who are the face of our organization in those rooms. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.